Dan Tom here with Home of Fight at Xtreme Couture with Kamaka III, talking about his upcoming fight booking with Luke Riley, and also talking about fresh off another UFC debut. Not many people get to make that second UFC debut, but Kai, it was short notice. I didn't get enough time to talk to you, and I know you had so much to do in that 1 week, but now that it's all over with, you're looking for the next one. Real quick though, how was the fallout and experience? I know the pressure must have been high, but you went out there, you performed, you put on an amazing fight. But tell us, how did you feel?
Yeah, I mean, pressure was high. Glad we got through it. Yeah, just grateful that everything's been on a roll, and life's been working out just because of the efforts I've been putting in, and just staying strong and determined through the whole process.
Yeah, I mean, Dakota Hope was no joke. He was a very, skillful as well as athletic fighter. Could explode into takedowns and strikes. And there were some, which you're not used to. You've seen it all, but, you've been on the wrong ends of fouls that have both had, points deducted if it affected your fights, but also fouls that maybe not the points deducted, but still had an effect. Can you tell me how much did some of those affect you? It looked like it was a clash of heads in round one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't a punch, but, I didn't. You don't know how it looks, right? So, and you don't know how they're gonna look at it. But Jeff Mullen came up to me after the fight in the medical tent and the medical room and was telling me, "Hey, Kai, I just want to let you know we it was a headbutt and we let the referees know." So that was good to know. But you just never know. In the fight, you gotta regroup because you don't know. Could have been an elbow, right? And you just gotta regroup and win the round. I still felt I won the rest of the round and then the next two. But, you just got to roll with the punches and the headbutts.
Yeah, and with the scorecards, as you know, even if you think you won, and many other people think you've won with some of your fights, not to dwell on the past, as those split decisions can be brutal, right? You're kind of holding your breath, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, but, at the same time, that's fighting, right? That's fighting. Fighting is supposed to be putting the best possible matchups on to where they can be that close, but you want to be the clear winner, right? But that's good matchmaking, and good on Dakota bringing a great fight. But you gotta, if you wanna win, you gotta widen the margin.
Absolutely, and last question on the Hope fight before we move on, but I've heard you before talk about in interviews about pacing and kind of how your experience, I'm guessing, is what's given you that. You hear a lot of fighters, even back in the day from Rickson Gracie, talking about pace fighting and feeling the pace of your, fighter. Now, in a short notice fight where you're not sure the preparation of your fighter, of Dakota Hope, were you feeling anything there as far as his pacing? 'Cause I know I've heard you talk before where if you're feeling the fighter kind of putting down that pack, you'll pick things up to get their energy and stress up to get them tired, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's about being efficient within your own style too, right? Styles make fights, and then you gotta be able to fill your gaps in your style. And I think I do that with every fight that I get and every fight that I put under my belt, especially with the experience that these guys that they bring to the table, right? Like you gotta fill those gaps on your game. So yeah, I definitely use the experience factor in it, and it's a different kind of experience, right? It's in cage experience, it's big fight experience, it's training partner experience, it's life experience that you gotta fill those gaps with.
Now, this next fight with Luke Riley that we're going to talk about here in a second is a 3-rounder, of course. Of course, you're not looking past him. But just to touch on that note and follow up a bit, do you think part of the experience is some of that 5-round experience that you've had outside the UFC and organizations like Tough Enough? Did you feel that experience help, A? And B, do you feel like maybe when you can get to that point in the UFC where you can start getting 5-rounders, do you think that's where we can see maybe even a new level of Kamaka?
I mean, 100%. I always preparing to be a better version of myself. And then you see where it fit and take the tools for the specific fight. So I feel like all the experience helps, right? You got the World Championship caliber experience with Brendan Loughnane, Diego Brandao, very classy. I mean, a very crafty veteran. Experience. You got Bubba Jenkins, Pedro Carvalho, world title challengers, all under my belt, right? So. And then you got the young vets like Dakota Hope coming up, trying to get past that new point, but you got to slow them down. You know what I mean? You got to be ready for whatever. So
Yeah, man, and that experience obviously has come in handy, and I gotta imagine it's gonna come in handy for this next matchup. You got an undefeated, young and up-and-coming prospect, a very talented kid in Luke Riley. But I gotta ask, this feels like a matchup that like the UFC matchmakers would salivate over, and for good reason. But from what I hear, you are the one that suggested this.
100%. Sean asked me when I'd be ready, if 2 months was a good enough time, and I told him, yeah, 100%. I just, would like some time, like. All these fights that I had after leaving the PFL were kind of come on short notice, with right reasoning, right? Yeah, that's just the process that you're in. And then, so just some good time to prepare, nothing by surprise. And then he asked me if there was any names that I had in mind, and first name I gave him was Luke Riley. So
first name, may I ask what stands out about Luke Riley that made him your first name per se?
He's undefeated. He's, he's a hungry prospect. And I feel like he's gonna deliver a good fight.
Yeah, sure. He's definitely been action-packed in his fights in and out of the UFC. And, from a fight fan perspective, he's definitely easy on the eyes, so to speak. But I got to say, I was going through Twitter, and I wasn't even for my research for this interview. This actually organically popped up. But he said, in reference to this fight, that he said Kai Kamaka would be a good stepping stone for where he's headed. That word stepping stone, though, can rightfully, trigger a lot of fighters. So I got to ask you, how do you feel about that statement? And what do do you consider yourself far more than a stepping stone, I'm assuming?
I mean, whatever he feels, right? I remember I was a kid that needed to take the next step up, at one point, and you got to overcome those challenges. I think he means just the next step up, because he'd be a fool to underestimate me.
Yeah, sure. I mean, your experience and the respect that you carry from your peers, which means a lot, right? Getting that respect from your colleagues, I'm sure it stands out a lot. But I also got to ask you, speaking of colleagues and respect in this matchup, you said you had a conversation with Sean. Now, for those who don't know, you've known Sean Shelby going way back to what, you were like 5 or 6 years old?
Yeah. I'm early in Sean's MMA career in general. We have a relationship dating back to Hawaii, so. He's been aware of me, but he's also made me earn these opportunities. So I'm grateful for that.
Sure, and this was before Sean was in a matchmaker role, right? Was he in some kind of camera role you were saying back then?
Yeah, he was in some camera role. He was working in Hawaii and kind of filming the industry from that perspective. So me and Sean go way back.
Awesome. And, you going back to Hawaii, you're probably referencing a lot of the fights that you came up watching. Obviously, you've been a pro for so long, but for people that don't know, you were born into this game from your family, indoctrinated. Obviously, the fight scene in Hawaii is strong. So I got to ask you, we had a MVP putting on Netflix MMA, and obviously, you're happy with the world leader. But as a fight fan who came up in the Elite XC Strike Force, you saw that saturation and how fun it was. Did you kind of get any of those vibes? Or do you think that MMA on Netflix is a good thing, or maybe even a bad thing? What's your opinion, Kai?
No, I think it's good. Good for fighters. People are becoming fighters every day, right? So everybody needs opportunities, and the less opportunities you get, the tougher it is for people to make this a living and move on in this career. So it's very good. It's healthy for MMA. It makes the game much more of a sport where guys can kind of find the groove and get their opportunities. That's the main thing.
Sure, and you even had friends competing on the card. I know you were recently training at one of Francis Ngannou's training facilities there. Obviously, is one of your boys. Different weight classes, but still, how happy are you to see guys like that get out there and have opportunities to compete and show their skills as well?
Yeah, he's definitely earned it. He's earned everything that he's made happen in this sport. So it's cool, good for guys like Francis to be able to kind of create these opportunities for fighters and bring these kind of conversations up, because more fights, better for MMA.
Yeah, definitely. And staying on your training partners just for a second before we move on, obviously, Sean Strickland brought the title back against all odds once again to Xtreme Couture. I was talking to, Punahele Soriano earlier, and he's coming back from some injury and inactivity. He said, he's having a hard time getting back into training, but then once he said once he heard Sean win the title, gave him like a motivation. And you hear that a lot from the guys from the gym. You posted about Sean with your family. So tell me, how motivating is it to see a guy that spends so much time with you and your family giving love to them as well?
Very motivating. Sean's a guy who is not too fancy. His process is very blunt and much like his demeanor. But he stays true to the grind, to his process. He's always in the gym. Nothing out of this world. It's just hard work. So it's very cool to see somebody from our gym, this country, and just one of your teammates can be a two-time champion in a sport that is very tough, right? And he just brings a lot of grit and determination to it. So it's very refreshing, especially as a dad, for his kids to see that, for somebody that they see every day, to achieve greatness like that twice. And I mean, Sean don't got an athletic bone in his body, so for him to, that just shows like hard work at its finest.
Right, absolutely. And speaking of hard work at its finest and, your Hawaiian journey, it's also going to coincide with another Hawaiian journey. You're going to be, of course, on the Max Holloway Conor McGregor card, UFC 329, July 11th. I've heard you spoke before this became official that you were always hoping to be on the same card as Max. So how kind of a dream is this booking from that perspective as well?
Dream come true, I'll tell you that. I would say Max he's a generational icon for a place like Hawaii. You got a handful of guys that have done stuff like that, like iconic moments. For cultures, right? But for our culture, I mean, we can name them, like especially a kid of my generation. My generation, you got. I would say Colt Brennan, Manti Te'o, Marcus Mariota, Tua. You got Max Holloway, right? So, and then there's many more before that, but we know who they are, and to be able to have this opportunity on a card like that just kind of shows a tale of like two stories. He has a story in itself. I have a story in itself, but also like we grew up on the same island, and for it to come to this on a big card, you add Conor in there, you add Luke Riley in there, undefeated. On Ninth Island is very huge for the people of Hawaii. I think it tells two different stories from Hawaii, from the islands, and coming together. It's very special.
Yeah, absolutely very special. And I got to ask, how about, flags can be kind of a touchy subject with the UFC. Sometimes you see them allow them or not. I'm still not sure myself, but are we going to see some Hawaiian flags being flown between you and Holloway that Saturday?
I mean, for sure. I know that there will be enough in there that night, right? I'm very excited for that week, to see the amount of Hawaiian flags in there. I think we're gonna, if there's anybody that could match Conor McGregor's stardom that week, it's Max Holloway, and then you got Ninth Island, and you add another Hawaiian on there like myself. We can go up hand in hand with Conor McGregor's stardom that night.
And speaking of the Hawaiian Ohana, that's family for those of you at home. Are you going to bring your family to these fights? Are we getting the tickets reserved? I know it's a big event. Are we bringing the Kamaka clan? How's that going down?
We're still trying to iron that out. But everybody's excited. Everybody's excited for the big week. I mean, it's the Met Gala of MMA, right? That week, it's like the what is that called? It's music awards of MMA that week. So everybody's excited. The whole island is excited, and I can feel it. And I think there's no better time for this type of opportunity for myself. I'm much more prepared than any other moment in my life, especially the process that it took to get back. Growing up against an undefeated guy. Luke Riley's 13-0. In his 13, he's 13-0. He turned pro after I left the UFC, and I'm 10-3 in my last 13 fights. But you look at our last 13 fights and the level of competition, it's a big difference. So. He's going to be preparing probably this as best as he can, as hard as he can, that he's ever did. So I'm excited because he's going to need it.
Awesome. And obviously there's not that the bonuses just went up, so I don't think they're going to maybe up the bonuses. But let's be honest, on a McGregor card, it feels like there's plenty of money to go around, plenty of eyes and opportunities to go around. So are we going to be bonus hunting? I know since you got that first bonus and your first into the UFC, you've kind of had your name always up there. And I know the win comes first, but you've had your eye on that bonus. And looking at how Luke Riley fights, looking at how you fight, man, I can't see how that's not a bonus-worthy fight. Am I correct, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, Luke knows what he's getting into, so, and I knew what I'm getting into with choosing Luke Riley. So, I mean, I'm ready to do it, and I'm ready to, not only that, I'm ready for us to challenge everybody else on the card to deliver. We got some great matchups on there that can definitely give us our run for our money, but I know we can do it.
And last thing on Luke Riley, I noticed that even though he's undefeated, he's one of those fighters that tends to, get hurt and maybe like stunned or kind of, have to find his feet that first round and then finds his flow. But I feel like you're a fighter that gets stronger as the fight goes on too. So are you having any kind of, without giving away game plans, any kind of preparation from, maybe locking in early and trying to stay locked in from then on, or you play it different how your opponent plays it? How do you have thoughts on his style?
I mean, great striker. Very successful striker, and I'm a wrestler first, so and a very crafty striker myself. So I'm gonna use everything. I'm gonna shoot a lot of takedowns on him. I'm gonna throw a lot of punches and kicks at him. I'm gonna throw everything at him. So I think he just has to prepare for everything, because I have time to prepare. I have a whole camp, and I'm very excited to be able to unload the clip and still be efficient. But I've definitely seen his fights, and I have my coaches looking into it. So we're ready to use everything this fight, and we're excited that we're able to.
And last thing on that, you said wrestling. That makes me happy, because I've heard you say it in interviews, and I know I've said it when breaking you down back when I was covering you for Bellator Hawaii. I used to compare you, and people agreed, by the way, that like Kai's kind of like a GSP. He's athletic, both athletic and skillful. He has the skills to take it anywhere. I feel like people underrate your wrestling, and they don't realize you come from a wrestling base. So that's interesting to hear you say that. Are you going to be looking to show more of your skills in general now that you're actually getting full camps, by the way, to prepare for these UFC fights?
100%. I mean, the last time I was able to really wrestle and kind of be able to be ready for a fight was probably the PFL season, probably the first fight, because the way the camps go in those fights, like you're kind of moving on with a lot of dings and bruises from the previous fights. So the first fight that I actually got to wrestle in a long time was probably the Bubba Jenkins fight. I had a real camp in that, and everything after that is like 6 weeks, 7 weeks. So yeah, I mean, I'm just able to prepare for nothing that's like, I'm prepared for everything, and nothing is coming by surprise this one, so able to train my full arsenal, able to be healthy and make sure I'm not getting too banged up for a short notice fight on a whim. So that was kind of played a lot in my fighting style the past couple fights. You just have to be in my head, like, be efficient, so but yeah, I'm just glad to be able to be training full go again, and I always am training, but just be able to have my body in the right spots, because the grappling and the wrestling can take a toll, but and everything was coming on like 3-week notice in the past 4 fights. So you didn't want to bang up your neck too much, or just be too beat up, because you could be fighting last week. What I mean? You could be. So that was just the way it was going. So my lifestyle was kind of dictating the way I was training and picking those sessions.
And last question, a fun one before we get out of here. I feel less bad asking, because you're no longer, thank goodness, cutting to 135. I don't know how you made that weight, and we're far enough from the fight out. You mentioned in interviews before, you talk about Hawaiian comfort food, and as you can see, I know a thing or two about Hawaiian comfort food. But I got to ask you about yours, Kai. What's your favorite, plate lunch? Whether you're at a mom and pop place, maybe a Zippy's or whatever. What's Kai's go-to when he's maybe not in camp or worried about it?
I just like a Hawaiian plate, usually like a poke bowl, lau and some squid luau, and 1.5 scoops of rice. Not 2 scoops. We'll do 1.5 scoops of rice.
Oh, sorry.
I'm glad you at least treat yourself to some food for a guy who only drinks water and ginger ale, from what I hear. But that's another conversation I want to grill you on a little later, Kai. In the meantime, I want to give you a chance to shout out any of your family, friends, team, sponsors before we go. The stage is yours, sir.
Man, I just want to thank everybody for supporting me. I'm super grateful for this opportunity. Ninth Island, Hawaii. My family. And I'm very excited for this opportunity. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You get the big fight card of International Fight Week. You got a Connor and Max main event. 2 kids from Hawaii. Man, I'm just grateful. I'm grateful to have this opportunity on this notice, and everything feels good. So I'm excited. Thank you to my sponsors that brought me to this point. My sponsors brought me to this point. Very grateful, especially for the last part of that process. And yeah, I'm excited to give Luke Riley my best version and the UFC my best version of myself.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here first, folks. International Fight Week will be fully stacked and have positive Hawaiian representation that day, that's for sure. Thank you for your time, Kai.